will now begin today's webinar. This webinar is being recorded so those not able to join us today can listen to the program at a time that is convenient for them. A link to the audio recording will be included and emailed to all participants, all attendees, and all who registered to be sent next week. My name is Katie Ramos, and I am the Administrative Services Manager for Goodwin House at Home. It is my pleasure to introduce your program moderator, Sue Dalton, Director of Sales at Goodwin House Incorporated.
Thank you, Katie, and hello to all of you who are joining our webinar today. I would ask of every one of these if you could please turn off your video and be sure and mute yourself during our presentation. That would be helpful. Thank you. Katie, are you going to start our slides?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure we're all looking at the same thing.
Are you not able to see them?
I'm not seeing the slides. One moment.
We can see the slides.
Good.
Try pushing the plus volume up.
I can't
There we
see this.
go. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for muting your microphones and turning off your cameras. You are here today and you've registered for this webinar most likely because you are interested in learning more about as presented by residents, both Goodwin House Alexandria and Goodwin House Bailey's Crossroads. I am not only the Director of Sales at Goodwin House, I'm also the daughter of a Goodwin House Alexandria resident. So I have seen firsthand the enjoyment that residents are receiving from the variety of activities that take place here regularly during the pandemic. And everyone in my family has peace of knowing that my mom has made a plan for her future that includes access to Goodwin House's high quality healthcare should she need it. Also, the best news of all, she has received both of her COVID vaccines, just like all of our other residents. And this is a huge relief to all of us. Our program today is in parts. First, I will share an overview of Goodwin House's approach to safety while keeping residents and members engaged throughout the pandemic, and our plans to assist residents rebound as we return to our new normal. Then, our resident panelists will each speak on a different topic. While these topics were selected by the panelists, you will see that they relate to the questions that people like you who are considering a move to a life plan community have yourselves. I think you'll find their information very relevant. But first, we do have a few housekeeping notes that we need to go over. You will see the PowerPoint slides and our featured experts on your computer screen. You may want to adjust the volume on your computer if you're having trouble hearing or our speakers. We have allowed time for questions and answers following the presentation, and we thank many of you for submitting questions ahead of time. It's unlikely, given the size of our audience today, that we will be able to answer all your questions, but we will do our very best. Let me explain to you how you do pose a question using the chat function of Zoom. Feel free to enter a question after clicking that icon in your control panel. This slide provides visual instruction on how to do it. I will give you a minute to review it. Okay, so while we're speaking about plan communities today, it's important to note that Goodwin House also serves older adults who wish to age in place in their own homes through our Goodwin House at Home program. Some Goodwin House at Home members have made a seamless transition to a life plan community with the assistance of their Goodwin House at Home team. As a mission-driven organization, Goodwin House also manages the Lewinsville retirement residence for older adults requiring financial assistance. No matter where you choose to live, Goodwin House provides healthcare services such as physical therapy through Goodwin House Home Health, compassionate care through Goodwin House Palliative Care, and hospice. So let's take a look at the topics we're going to cover today. We will begin by briefly discussing how we have supported Goodwin House residents, members, and our community throughout the COVID-19. Our panelists will then speak individually. We will conclude with an opportunity for you to ask questions of our resident panelists. The Goodwin House leadership team has been focused on keeping residents and staff safe since late February of last year. It's hard to believe that it's been a year. It's been more than a year. The Infection Precaution Committee was formed early and met daily for many months. Every decision involved balancing the need for safety while maintaining a quality of life. We were among the first of the life plan communities to begin regular testing of residents and staff. Despite the fact that all residents and over 90% of our staff have now been fully vaccinated, we continue to test regularly. Speaking of vaccines, last month we were thrilled to be able to offer the vaccine to Goodwin House at Home members, as well as some Priority Club members that will soon be moving into one of our communities. Our mission mindset led us to help others, to initiate a group buy of PPE so that other life plan communities could have access to this much needed equipment when it was in short supply. Additionally, we've created not one, but 2 playbooks, which spell out all that we have done since the beginning of the pandemic. We offer this playbook to other organizations, basically anybody who wants it, at no charge, in order to assist them in their journey through the pandemic. And now we're thinking about rebounding. We're thinking about returning to a new normal. We have marveled at the resiliency of older adults throughout the pandemic. Residents and Priority Club members have found creative ways to stay connected and active. Their strength and attitude have been an inspiration to all of us. And yet, for all of us, the pandemic has taken a toll. Regardless of our age, we will all benefit from being intentional about rebounding well. Goodwin House Incorporated is now underway on developing a program we're calling Rebounding Well. Its goal is to help older adults that are part of the Goodwin House family be intentional about assessing their health factors and taking steps to bridge any gaps. The Rebounding Well program is built on the foundation of the dimensions of wellness. Over the next 2 slides, I will share with you what we're doing and the wellness dimensions we're focused on. The pandemic has altered our regular schedules for exercise, and then winter arrived, keeping us indoors. Weather starts to warm up as it is right now. If you look outside, it's a beautiful day. We may jump outdoors at the first chance, but our muscles may not be quite ready yet. If you'd like some help in building up to your previous fitness level or even improving it, be sure to check out the many online resources featuring fitness videos for people of all age groups. Additionally, on our website, you will find videos of our own fitness instructors presenting their classes. More than half of adults 50 and older participating in an AARP survey last October reported social isolation, defined as an absence of meaningful social relationships during the pandemic. Among participants 50 and older, it was women who struggled the most, with almost 3 in 10 reporting they had gone 1 to 3 months without interacting with people outside of their household or workplace. Astronaut Scott Kelly, who's an expert in social isolation because he spent 340 days isolated in space, is working with the foundation to bring awareness about the report's findings and solutions. While astronauts are in space, NASA provides support and counseling for them. But the survey shows that many people who feel isolated do not take advantage of available resources that they have. Only 11% of survey respondents turned to a medical professional, sad or down, and almost a third of those 50 and over said they didn't turn to anyone for support during the pandemic. There are many resources available to the area through churches, AARP, healthcare providers, and others, and we urge you to think about that and reach out if you're feeling sad or depressed. Emergency Health Products conducted a study focused on our immune systems. While many Americans are taking precautionary measures due to the pandemic, their overall well-being has taken the brunt of it. As a result of the pandemic, 48% of Americans are stressed more often, 42% are eating less healthy, and 30% are sleeping worse. All elements that can impact our immune health. Just a reminder that if you could all mute microphones, that would be helpful. Thank you. Many of us have canceled medical appointments due to concerns, and dentist appointments as well, due to concerns about exposure. If you have hesitations about exposure, ask your doctor's offices to explain their precaution efforts. This could help give you some comfort in scheduling your regular checkups or other appointments that really shouldn't be put off for too long. In another study, only 9% of older adults reported having fair or poor overall mental health during the pandemic, similar to their previous answer, indication of what the study calls some signs of resilience. Nevertheless, the study found that general happiness has declined. About half as many older adults now report they are very happy or extremely happy, and an increasing number report occasional feelings of depression or isolation. We encourage all of you and everyone to pay attention to mental and cognitive health. Above all, speak with your primary care physician if you have any concerns. It's best to catch any issues early rather than later. But you have likely joined us today to learn more about life at Goodwin House. So let's get to that part of our program. We are fortunate to have 5 resident panelists to speak to you today. Our first panelist is Fred Pang. Fred and his wife Brenda moved to Goodwin House Alexandria from Arlington in March of 2020. Fred grew up in Hawaii, where he attended the University of Hawaii. His 27-year-long service in the U.S. Air Force included a tour of duty in Vietnam. After his retirement, he served on the Senate Armed Services Committee and was appointed during the Clinton administration as Assistant Secretary of the Navy and later Assistant Secretary of Defense and Principal Duty under Secretary of Defense. After leaving public service, Fred founded a consulting firm which worked closely with the Department of Defense. Fred will tell us about the research that he and Brenda conducted when deciding to move to a life plan community. Fred?
Hi, everyone. I was asked to talk about the 3 priorities that were important for us when we chose Goodwin House. And really, they centered around 3 questions. The first was, how could we age gracefully and happily without being a burden to our family? The second was, how could we take care of our eventual healthcare needs, which are almost certainly going to arise as we age? And 3, how could we be assured of the long-term financial security of the places that we considered? So with regard to the first question, for us, and I'm sure for you, happiness matters a lot, not only for ourselves, but for our family. And we felt it would be unfortunate if in our waning years that any tensions should arise about our care. And I say that because we've seen loving families end up with strained relationships caring for parents who age at home, especially those who end up needing prolonged health care. All too often, we've seen they've waited too long and then must cast about. And what they find really ends up not being that satisfactory. In our situation, we engaged our family. I mean, we talked to our son and daughter about moving into senior living. And their initial reaction was, frankly, skeptical. They felt they were perfectly capable of taking care of us because right now we're pretty healthy. But we reminded them of some of their friends for whom this turned out to be a very big burden. And the more we talked, the more we came to realize that our moving to senior living would be a good thing for us as a family. Also, there's a side benefit to that, and that is we downsized. We were able to give with a warm hand and clear out a lot of stuff that we had accumulated over the years so that our kids wouldn't have to slog through it after we're gone. Frankly, we know we made the right decision. We're very happy here. And, you know, our kids have said to us that our moving here was a very, very good gift to them. They know that we're happy. They can know they can visit us, and they know that we're going to be well cared for. With regard to the second question, healthcare, if you are like us, I mean, we were focused on what kind of apartment would suit us. We wanted one that would be big enough for us to have our family and friends visit with us comfortably. So we visited both Goodwin House campuses as well as other properties with that center in our mind. But the reality too is that we will likely need healthcare as we age. So it is equally important, I think, to know how healthcare is managed in the communities you visit. Make sure you check out the accommodations and plans that are offered. Talk with some of the residents about the care they are receiving and about the staff, and talk to the staff as well. I think you want to make sure that you would be comfortable, and this is very important, living here and not existing if you ever had to go to assisted living. For us, it was also important that any transition from independent to assisted living would be as seamless as possible. We have that here at Goodwin House. You know, short of hospital care, all short and long-term care is on campus. And I can attest that the accommodations and care are excellent. Some of the other properties we visited weren't as seamless. Some required moving off independent living campus to a health facility. I think that is not only inconvenient, but also there is a loss of a feeling of community. And from what I've witnessed here, that feeling of community is not lost. People that move to assisted living or nursing care still are among the people in our community. And one doesn't have to worry about driving or going a distance to visit. You can just take a few short steps and you're there. The third question dealt with financial stability. You know, as we considered where we would settle, I remember our financial advisor telling us how important it would be to our long-term security to move into a financially strong, stable community. So we inquired into the financial condition of the properties we considered. Our financial advisor helped us in reviewing balance sheets, income statements, and cash flow statements. We explored questions like, is the property leveraged? Do they have a reserve? What is their litigation history? Is there any ongoing litigation? I think you want to do those things to make sure as best you can that there aren't any surprises down the road. We feel comfortable after our review that Goodwin House had a strong financial base and the means to work through tough times and continue to invest in the well-being of our community. And frankly, we can see it in the way that it has navigated the pandemic. I was surprised. I moved in at the beginning of the quote lockdown, and the transition was amazing. So the bottom line for us is that we feel secure and happy here. We are a small village that is well governed. There is a great sense of community for those who live and work here. And very importantly, it is financially secure. We look forward to you joining us. I think you will be glad you made the choice. Thank you for listening to me. And now back to you, Susan.
Thank you very much, Fred. Thank you. Fred's tips for the research that he and Brenda conducted while they were thinking about moving to a life plan community is very important, and probably that's a stage that many of you might be in right now. So I hope that you found his topic very helpful. Some of you are also probably thinking about, well, if I move to a life plan community, how on earth am I going to do that? How am I going to get rid of all this stuff that I have in my house? And that's why we're having Betty Lou White as our next speaker. Betty Lou has been a resident at Goodwin House Bailey's Crossroads for 6.5 years. Originally from Pasadena, California, Betty Lou worked for the government for 32 years, which included assignments in Paris and London. After transferring to the computer field, she worked as a programmer, systems analyst, and manager before retiring as group chief for application services. She lived in Western Fairfax County before moving to Bailey's Crossroads. Betty Lou will share her experiences with downsizing as she prepared to make the move. Betty Lou?
Hi, thank you. Welcome everyone. And to start with, I need to give you some background. My mother lived with me for 30 years. And 20 years ago, upon her death and upon my retirement, which were within two weeks, I faced a lot of things to go through. And one of those things I wanted to work on was organizing my house. So where do you begin? Luckily, a friend of mine invited me to join her to a lecture on downsizing. And from that lecture, I took away one strategy, which I sort of used throughout the years of downsizing. And that strategy was, don't look at the house. Don't look at a room. Just look at one drawer at a time. And in that drawer, you have to make a decision about every single item. First, you take the item, is this going to stay in that same drawer? If it is, replace it. Is the item going to go someplace else? If it is going someplace else, immediately walk it to that someplace else. Is it going to be donated? Put it in a box that's for donations, or is it going to be trashed? And it's trashed. The one thing you get out of just this one exercise is you started downsizing. It's small, but it's a start. The other is you're starting to make decisions. And in downsizing, decisions are sometimes the hardest thing to do. So that was a very excellent experience. Then I also had the problem, our photographs. That was one of the things that was just a major problem with me, because my mother took photographs of everything. So I had a ton of photographs to go through. So again, starting small, I took a small chunk of these photographs and started to go through them. And I looked at them and figured out what to do with them. Finally, it dawned on me about when was the last time I actually looked at this photograph? And it was 30 or 40 years prior. So I thought, oh, so I looked at this photograph and I said, okay, that's good for another 30 or 40 years. And I tossed it. Now, in talking about photographs, I'm not talking about family heirloom generational photographs. Those are priceless. Those stay within your family. I'm talking about the average day snapshots, etc. When I moved in here and a few years later, I met a woman, what she did, I thought it was genius, is she scanned all her photographs. She didn't look at them. She just scanned them in and then was able to get rid of the actual physical photographs. And later when she moved into Goodwin House, she was able to organize the photographs, give them to family, send them to family, do books, history books, etc. So I thought that was a genius idea. The other thing is basically when you're downsizing, you are getting rid of stuff. It's just stuff. It's furniture. It's the dining, dinnerware, kitchenware, who knows what, artwork. And out there, pre-pandemic, there are a lot of places that are willing to accept your stuff. But I found a much better resource, much closer to home. And what that was, who she was, it was my housekeeper, my cleaning lady, lovely woman who was the sole support of the family of 4. Her husband was handicapped. So I started asking her, would she want this or would she want that? And she would take a few things, but I felt there was some discomfort. And I realized that she probably thought maybe I was trying to use her charity or something like that. So we sat down and talked. And I explained to her that I needed to get rid of these things. And I would be happy if she could accept them. Also, that her acceptance of the stuff was a gift to me because I knew it was going to be well taken care of. Now, all of this, when she's accepting these things, it was with the caveat she had to take them out. I was not delivering them, and she had a lot of friends or family that would help her. Then, so she started accepting more and more. But there were things that she did not want or did not need. But she had this wonderful network of extended family, friends, and church that she would spread the word. And this is like magic. All of a sudden, whatever I needed to go at the time was accepted. People were coming. And I had a piano, and I found out that is the hardest thing to get rid of. One, it's extremely difficult to move. And 2, it's not many people really want the instrument anymore, sadly. So she spread the word. And to my great joy, a young family from her church who had small children had wanted a piano. They wanted a piano, but they couldn't afford it. And they just happened to have cousins who were movers. So they came in real quickly, took the piano, and it's out there and doing great things. This is just a little bit of things of ideas of what to look for in downsizing. Is downsizing fun? No, it isn't. Is it emotional? Yes. There's a lot of things you'll come across that you haven't seen for years, and maybe then you don't really need them, but they may bring up memories. It's the one thing about getting rid of stuff is it's liberating. You get to a point where, at least I did, that it felt better. I felt a weight that I was feeling because I could see all the stuff I wanted to get rid of. It was leaving the house. It was leaving. It is a goal to get to. It works. It's one day at a time. You can't keep at it constantly. You have to take rest. But if you just do 1 drawer a day, in 30 days, you've cleaned up 30 drawers. So if you were to if anything, start today if you already haven't, and just start small. And I wish you well, and I do hope you are doing well. So you take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty Lou. Great tips for downsizing. I hope all of you go home and pick your first drawer that you're going to work through to start your downsizing process. So you have heard about researching communities. You have heard about preparing to move to a community. And now you're going to hear about actually living in the community. So we're going to hear now from Judy Curtis and Jim Bradley. Judy grew up in a small waterfront town in Rhode Island. After earning her bachelor's and master's degrees in chemistry, she taught chemistry at the college level for 15 years. In 1992, Judy worked to launch 2 companies and to turn around a third. Judy will be discussing the groups and activities she has chosen to get involved with at Goodwin House, Alexandria. Jim grew up in Peach Bottom, Pennsylvania, near Lancaster. He earned his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering while on an ROTC scholarship at the University of Pennsylvania and an MBA from Stanford. After retiring from a 20-year-long career in the Navy, Jim worked as the controller of a real estate development firm in Washington for 27 years. Jim and Judy met in 2017 and new love blossomed for the two of them. When they're not at home at GHA, they might be spotted riding around in Jim's 1955 MG or working on their log cabin in Rhode Island. What you'll hear is that Jim's interests are entirely different from Judy's, and they both will share what they enjoy doing at Goodwin House Alexandria. We're going to start with Judy.
Good morning, all. It's fun to be here and share some of the points that we've learned while living at Goodwin House. Fred and Betty Lou have presented things and ideas about steps you need to take before moving. And now it's time to talk about settling in. And what better way to do that is to become part of the community. And clearly, we wanted to start by getting to know our fellow residents and members of our community. It occurred to us the easiest and most immediate way to do that is to share meals. I like to cook a lot, and I wasn't sure about having somebody else cook 3 meals a day and what was I going to do. But I soon realized it was a blessing. And the conversation and so forth, socialization around the table were great. There are 3 venues to go to. The most informal is the bistro. Don't be shy about stopping and sitting at any seat available. You'll be wearing name tags, as we all do, that identify you as new, and people will really want to meet you. It's a fast way to getting to know people and having fun and socializing. Another way is to take advantage of the many diverse activities that you may have heard about here. There's such a wide range. It goes from art classes to bridge, to exercise classes, to lectures, to concerts, to woodworking, and on and on. You could go on forever. And furthermore, if it's not there and you want to start it, you're welcome to do that. Most things will happen in person. Some take advantage of the Goodwin House internal cable channels on TV. And there are recordings on the Goodwin House YouTube channel. Next, getting involved in committees. Satisfying for many of us and a way to learn about how the various parts of Goodwin House function. Things like finance and activities, spiritual health, dining, and facilities. Some may pique your interest more than others. All these committees do serve 2 purposes, I think. One is it is an opportunity for all of us as residents to engage in what happens in these various areas of operation and activities. And secondly, it gives us a chance to volunteer. That was not something I thought of before moving in, but it's volunteering within Goodwin House. Things like teas that are held for the small houses, residents. And then wider outside the community where things are collected like the tops to cans and clothing. And so they get passed on and they benefit the community at large. I quickly realized, knowing myself a bit, that with just 24 hours in a day, I needed to try things out and see which ones really lined up with what my interests are and where I thought I would contribute. Currently, I'm part of the Health Sciences Committee and also marketing, and I'm finding them both very satisfying. I also looked at balancing the commitments here at Goodwin House with my commitments in the wider community that were pre-GHA commitments. So it seems to be working right now. I'm not feeling overextended, but I also realize that the balance will probably shift as I age, where I spend more of my time at Goodwin House than in the outside community. So that gives you an idea of what's available and a couple of the things that I'm involved in. I'd like to introduce my other half, Jim Bradley.
Hello. As you can see, Judy is very busy, and she's a joiner and a doer. I'm not a joiner, but I am more or less of a doer. And so I would like to kind of tell you some of the things that I do. And I would stress that many of the things that I do now are things that I did in retirement. I was retired for about 7 years before I moved in here with Judy. And so I had a routine of things I did. And I'm going to elaborate a little bit about what they were. But the point was, those were things that I could continue to do from here while I was in independent living. And I intend to continue to do that. And I think what it means is you don't need to give up the activities that you're now enjoying to come to a place like this. For example, Sue mentioned the MG. Judy and I have done quite a bit with the local MG car club, and we've taken a trip to Florida on the auto train. We've done other events locally here. And interestingly enough, with another Goodwin House resident, he and I took, I took my MG, he took his TR6, and we participated in the Campagna Center's Alexandria Christmas Walk. And then when we came back from that, there were 4 or 5 other MGs there. So they all came back here. We had a car show out front, and then they came up to our apartment, and we had lunch. Another thing that I have done and continue to do is to play my tuba. I played it in high school. I quit because it was not cool to do it in college. I then went on and started up again about 10 years ago, where I played with the Mount Vernon Community Band. And one of our circuits, our gigs were, if you will, the retirement community. So we played at Paul Spring, and Bailey's Crossroads, and Fairfax, and so forth, and here too. So that's part of my routine, and I hope to continue that. But in fact, I've continued here in a different way because of COVID. The band was not practicing, the band was not playing. So I would have this fall anyhow, and really enjoyed it, Sunday afternoons, we'd have a concert from our balcony. We're on the 10th floor in the parking lot area. So we had a crowd of, well, excuse me, a crowd is overstating it. Maybe 10 or 15 people, but well received, playing sort of service songs and patriotic kind of music, a little bit of show tunes. So that was an activity I did that I continue to do. Also, Judy and I, before moving in here, she bought tickets to the Alexandria Symphony Orchestra. I bought tickets to the Choral Arts Society, the Kennedy Center. So we did that, and we will continue that, albeit interrupted to some degree because of COVID. We also were both active in our church. She at Westminster Presbyterian and me at Emmanuel Episcopal on Russell Road. And so we've continued that involvement. And relating to those kind of activities, I also had a breakfast group. In fact, I had 2 breakfast groups. Wednesday morning was my Linden Street neighborhood group at 8 o'clock at the Royal Restaurant in Alexandria. And then on Friday mornings, it was the Emmanuel Church group. These are men's groups now, 6 or 8 guys. Would go to Atlantis in Bradley Shopping Center. But of course, with COVID, we still do it, but it's done by Zoom. And hopefully we'll get back to that at some point in time. And I guess the final thing that we collectively do and uses a fair amount of our time is that Judy and I, in December of 2018, bought a property up in Rhode Island. And it's near the beach, so we go to the beach club, and we've got the swim and tennis club and stuff like that. So, and maybe more importantly, in some respects, is for me anyhow, I'm an outside guy, and I only do sort of gardening kind of work here, which is readily available, lots to do. But up there, we have 4 acres that's sort of neglected. The property was kind of listed as a fixer-upper, and Judy's been working fixing up inside, and I've been sort of working fixing up outside. My toy up there is a billy goat, and a billy goat, I would add, is not the kind of goat you're thinking of, although it might be useful, but it's a walk behind power, and I mean powerful brush mower, chopper, like a huge rotary mower. And so I've been really tearing into place, and I have a chainsaw. In fact, I have two chainsaws, I have electric one and power one. It's time for me to stop talking. And the only other thing I want to say before I stop talking is the daily routine here is likewise full of lots of activities. We both go down to the fitness center first thing in the morning. We are involved in activities throughout the day. And one of my principal activities was working outside here in the garden. So we had a lot of fun there. Anyhow, my point is there's lots to do. I like doing it. I think you would enjoy doing it. I would invite you to join us here. The water's fine. And in that regard, Judy has an anecdote that I think it illustrates the point of how we like being here, or why.
We both met a young couple, even before they were married, and became very close to them. They came about a month after we moved in and into Goodwin House to get together for brunch after church. And so we gave them the royal tour and walked everywhere. They asked a lot of questions. You could see from their expressions, they were really, really amazed. Their parting words were, "This is not an old folks' home. We're jealous. You're on a cruise ship." We definitely love living here and are thrilled that we made the choice to do it when we did.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Judy and Jim. Those were really great comments. I think it's important that you told us so much about what you do that Goodwin House offers you, but also how you've continued your interests and hobbies outside of Goodwin House and have continued to do that. And I think that's an important message for our audience to hear. And I would just like to personally state that Jim Bradley has personally put the cool back in tuba. So tubas are cool again, thanks to Jim. Our final panelist is Claudia Blake. And Claudia has been a Goodwin House Bailey's Crossroads resident for 6 years. After growing up in Minneapolis, she spent years as a diplomat's wife, doing various projects in Africa. During the periods that she was in the United States, she held a variety of positions, including being the money manager at Choices for Aging in Falls Church, where she assisted seniors in deciding their best living options. Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you, Sue. I will say when I was about 30, an older man in my congregation here in Arlington said, "No one moves to a retirement community too soon. Many move too late. They move too late to make the kinds of decisions and choices that Jim talked about. They too late to have the energy to even do one drawer, as Betty Lou talked about. Too late to create a new life for themselves in a new place, as Judy and Jim talked about. So keep that in mind. As I've been here in Goodwin House, Bailey's Crossroads, and hosting open houses, people often say that they're not ready yet. It's too early. And so I bring out this story to just give you another thing to think about. Another thing that happens at open houses is that people seem hesitant about the notion of communal living. And so I ask you in the audience today to think about, what do the words communal living evoke? Are you thinking of time in the military, your life in college dorms or fraternities or sororities? Are you thinking of a stereotypical small town where everybody's nose is in everybody else's business? The reality is that you will be living in your private home, which happens to be an apartment here at Goodwin House. Lots of people around the world spend their whole lives in apartments. It's not a bad thing. You open your door when you want to leave or when you have chosen to invite somebody in. No one comes knocking on your door. No one has a habit of dropping in for coffee unannounced. It just doesn't happen. There's too much respect for each of the privacy that we each want. You have, when you live here, opportunities to participate in group activities or individual activities, whether it's close classes or trips or working in the fitness center by yourself, but there's no pressure for you to do any of it. You can be alone, pursuing your own interests, genealogy or stamp collecting or woodworking or working in the garden, until such time as you'd like a break. Maybe you want a beer with your neighbor down the hall. Maybe you want to share a meal in your apartment or in one of our dining venues with an old friend from your former neighborhood. All of those things are possible. All of those things happen all the time. You can learn new skills here, pursue new interests, continue to be very involved politically and socially in the wider world, to whatever level pleases you. You haven't joined a monastery, a convent, you're not living in an ashram, and you're certainly not in prison. You've chosen a supportive place to live, and it's a great thing. After a few months, a surprising number of introverts who've moved in here have told me that they had no idea how lonely they were, how isolated in houses that they had loved. Living here, they feel safe, they feel free, and they feel tension leaving their bodies. What's not to like about that? Back to you, Sue.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Excellent comments for our audience, and what kind of dispelling some of those myths about living in a senior living community. So thank you, and thank you to all of our panelists for their comments. I'm sure that those of you in the audience have learned a lot about life at Goodwin House. We do have some time for questions and answers, and so we are going to get right to that. There were some questions that were submitted ahead of time, and so I'm going to ask some of our panelists those questions specifically. And so here's a question, and Judy, I think I'm going to direct this one to you. In retrospect, what would you say was the most important thing you did or could have done to prepare for living at Goodwin House?
I have a couple thoughts on that. First of all, I did come from a high-rise building, so that I knew that living in a high-rise would not be a difficult problem for me anyhow, or for Jim, because we were both in Crystal City. But I think most of all, I worried about downsizing. That was the biggest problem. Many people come with too much, is the comment that I'd heard after I got here. But making the choices, actually plotting the room space on a graph paper and putting the furniture where it was going to be and seeing how it all worked, it was amazing. Due to circumstances, we weren't even here when the furniture and everything was moved in. And we walked in and it was done the way that we wanted it done and the way that it fit. And it all worked beautifully. It was the best thing to have done, was to really downsize.
Excellent. Okay, we do have another question specifically about Goodwin House at Home that we did mention earlier in the presentation. And Goodwin House at Home is a program that allows older adults to stay in their own homes and provide some care if needed, all of which can be managed by the Goodwin House at Home team. And so if you're interested in learning more about Goodwin House at Home, I would urge you to go to our website and read about it on the website, and then you can click a submission form there to get more information, or you're always welcome to call and get more information about Goodwin House at Home. Another one of our questions that was entered ahead of time, and this is timely. I'm going to direct this one to Fred. What did you think of the COVID requirements that were set up for you?
Well, we moved in here 2 days before the quote lockdown. And what impressed me was that, there was a transition plan already in place so that when we arrived, I mean, we were welcomed by our neighbor and another resident here. We were in our apartment for 14 days. That was part of the quarantine. It was all explained to us. And so it turned out to be a good thing because we moved in. We're in now our apartment 14 days. Food was delivered to us. All our needs were met. And we had time to kind of arrange our apartment so that at the end of 14 days, I mean, it was set. There was no more clutter. and the other thing is that, this is not a top-down operation here. I mean, it's very collaborative. The residents have a say and interact with the leadership here. And frankly, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, all you got to do is look at the daily reports, okay, about the infection rate, and I don't think it ever went above, a handful. I mean, and so the protocols that we have, I mean, we're reminded of every day, but not in a heavy-handed way. I mean, so what's going on, and to comply, and it's a sense of community. Everybody cares for each other, so there's a sense of collective security here, and that's what's that made it tolerable over the 11 months that we've been here. In fact, not only tolerable, it was almost invisible. I mean, at least to us.
That's great. Thank you, Fred. Here's another question that was submitted early. And Betty Lou, I'm going to address this one to you. How do people adjust when the square footage of their apartment is much less than their house had?
Oh, very, very good question. For example, I lived in my house for 33 years. It was just under 2,000 square feet, 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, large living room, dining room, huge kitchen, open kitchen, family room, etc. It was a beautiful house. But when I downsized, I moved into an 850 square foot apartment, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and it's perfect. When you're looking at, it's just like, it fits me to a glove. The parts in my house that I actually lived in were my bedroom, my office, my family room, and my kitchen. And that's exactly what I have here. And I have actually, this is a built-in desk that I'm sitting in, and it's my office. So I have gotten rid of all that extra clutter that I don't have to look at. And clutter, I don't mean stuff. I mean extra space, extra whatever, that I just basically walk through. So living in this compact apartment, which is not really compact, it's nice, it's wonderful. And also I got rid of all the maintenance of a house. So I found the adjustment easy, very easy. These apartments, if they're redone or they're new and all. So you just double check and look at, very sincerely, look at what you actually live in your house. You'd be surprised.
Could I add something to that, Sue?
Of course, Claudia.
I took an approach that I think not many people do, which is that I had a house full of beautiful Oriental furniture that I inherited from my in-laws. I had loved it. It also is not really my style. I'm more modern. I was hesitant to get rid of it, but I decided that since I was moving to a smaller space, I was going to have things that worked there, not things that I made work there. So when I moved in, I had a bed, a chair, and a lamp, and a couple rugs. And I had artwork, which I wanted to bring with me, all those personal things. But over the first year I was here, I bought my furniture and I bought things that work in my space. It's just another way to look at it.
That's great. And, Claudia, while you're right there, I'm going to direct another question to you, which is, and you talked about this a little bit in your presentation, but maybe you can enlighten us a little bit more. How did you know when it was time to move to Goodwin House?
Well, as I say, I already had the man when I was 30 telling me, in a sense, planting the seed that I should think about it. It would never be too early. When I was in about 40, 42, Goodwin House Bailey's Crossroads opened, and the first residents here happened to be people from my church. Many others followed. I visited them, saw them at church. They were thriving. They loved it. They were involved in lots of creative things. I just looked at them and said, that's what I want. When I'm old enough, when I grow up, I'm going to be part of whatever they're part of. So I had to wait 2 decades to get old enough to. I will say that having wanted it all that time, and then running into some health things where after I'd applied, I'd been on the list for about a year. I called them up and said, I'm getting worried that maybe there's going to be a health issue here and I won't be acceptable anymore. I won't pass the tests. I want whatever you could give me right now. I got a call the next day telling me they had an apartment. And I have to say, I still can remember the physical feeling I had of, I'm not ready. It's too soon. I can't do that. I had to really pull back and stop myself and remind myself that this was what I wanted. And of course we can do it if we haven't waited too long.
Yes, Betty Lou, you want to add to that?
Yes, I moved in relatively young, mainly is because I have no family. And as I started downsizing, I thought I was going to live in my house forever until I died. And then I realized I had no one to look after me as I looked after my mother. And I was a caregiver for her for the last 10 years. And that was the impetus of looking for a place that had the life care plan that was going to take care of me and had all of that was involved. And when I found Goodwin House, it was like, yes. And I couldn't wait to move in. And the perfect apartment came up at the right time. And I will never look back. It was the best decision for this time in my life. And I can get to know people and different things. And yeah, it's wonderful.
That's great. Thank you. As you can see, these are some happy residents. And so thank you to our resident panelists for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us and be our resident panelists today. Thank you to all of our attendees who took time out of your busy schedule to sit through this Zoom webinar. We hope that you found it very helpful. We will send you the link to the recording of today's webinar in a follow-up email. And please, after you receive it, please feel free to share it with other friends and family who gain from listening to our residents speak honestly about their experiences with Goodwin House. We encourage you to join us for our upcoming webinars. You can find information about them on the events section of our site. And if you would like more information about Goodwin House or Goodwin House at Home, we encourage you to call or email us. We will contact information on the screen so that you can jot it down. Thank you again for joining us. Please stay safe